Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all to the September 17th, 2020.
To unmute for some reason, Chuck?
No, I just wanted to make sure people realize Barry came in here and muted everybody.
Sounds fine. I'll go back on mute.
All right, once again, folks, I would like to welcome you all to the September 17th, 2020 Planning and Zoning meeting. And the time is about 1:10 in the afternoon.
Mr. Chair, you can hear me?
Yes, who is this?
That's Sean.
Ken, can you hear me?
Is this Sean? Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Sean, if you have Terry mic, you might have got mute.
Okay, can you hear me, Ken?
Yes, I can.
That's what happens when you tell Barry to do it.
Can you hear me, Sean?
We can, and so can the WebEx meeting.
Okay, very
So
well.
I believe we've got everybody on board and everybody's muted. So if you're a board member, obviously unmute yourself. And when your application hearing comes up, unmute yourself at that time. The first item would be Rosika. So you can begin the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Thank you, Sean. Now, I do have a few housekeeping items, if we could, please. Now, as you might all experience, there are some audio delays. So you may wish to just pause a second until the channels are clear. We had a few difficulties last time, so what I would recommend simply that you ask for recognition prior to speaking, and then everyone will get their opportunity to speak and in proper order. So we go on. The first order of business today are to look at the minutes from last meeting of August 20th, 2020. If you have any comments, please state so at this time.
Mr. Chair, I recommend recommendation that the minutes from September
20th,
20th?
August.
No, August, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong paper. From August 20th, 2020, that they'd be passed.
All right, there's a motion on the floor, ladies and gentlemen. Is there a second?
This is Pat Malberg, I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Is there any discussion relative to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by roll call. We'll start at Mr. Bravender's end of the table here.
Bravender, aye.
Felger, aye.
Roll call time. Malberg votes aye.
Jan? Jan, do you wish to vote on approval or disapproval of the minutes? All right, the chair will deem that the minutes are approved. Thank you. All right, our first order of business today is Ben Voshapka. Very well. Sir, would you like to explain what, oh, excuse me, I'm going to go back to Sean, and he will kind of give the board a recap, and then you can have your input as well.
Yes,
Sean?
Mr. Chair, and one more housekeeping item. For those attending from the public on WebEx, you have two options. Your audio is on and your video is on, so we can hear and or see you. If your video is on and you don't want WebEx people seeing you as you're waiting for your item, you would need to turn your video off. That's up to you. So, Mr. Chair, the first item was continued for a site inspection and for the applicant to further explore access from the pit. We did get approval from the highway department. I'm trying to get to the slide. We did get approval from the highway department to go through the pit road and through the farm, the existing driveway and access on County Road 32. Conditional on meets the requirements for what needs to be done on the county road. So the access issue has been solved.
John, just so you're aware, you still have the agenda screen up.
I know, it's not letting me, there we go. So the pit area is on the northern part of the property. And the haul route will be through the property, accessing the county road at the existing driveway per the highway department requirements, and not going onto the township road Briarwood. With that, I'll turn it over to the chair and the planning commission to discuss the mining operation itself.
Mr. Riley, this is Ken. Now, that's quite a change then from the previous version of that road access that we had been discussing before. I recall that had been going through the field onto the county road, but now, just to be clear, it's going down through his homestead property, onto his private property, onto the road, and this is all acceptable, I'm sure, to the township?
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
It's using part of the road that's there, coming out at our meeting, just like I said, it would come out into that field and parallel our driveway.
Oh,
I
see.
have to
I see.
connect to our driveway
Oh,
at
okay.
the end.
Sure, right at the right-of-way.
Correct.
Okay, very well. Sorry, I was
Right.
a little bit mistaken there. Okay, very well. Mr. Boshepka, would you like to add anything else to the narrative?
Well, there was just two issues. That was one, and I took care of that with the highway department. And then the other one was obviously if the township would give me approval, and they did.
Okay,
Other than that, I don't think there was any other problems.
all right, very well.
So, Mr. Chair, what's on the table are the normal items of the Granville Pit, duration of the permit, letter of credit requirements, and operating hours.
Okay, very well. Are there any questions for the board members before I go to the public? We can start with you, Pat, and work the other way. Any comments on this?
No questions, Ken? I have no questions, Ken.
Jan?
I wonder if she muted herself.
Not certain. Felger has no comments.
Ravender has no comments.
Very well, thank you. Is there anyone joining us today remotely from the public who would wish to say anything relative to this application? And I don't know how many of you may be out there, but we'll try and have some sort of order. So if you just simply wish to speak relative to this application, jump right in and we'll have to sort it out once you start if others wish to participate. So I'll give you a few minutes here. We'll wait patiently until we hear, if any, from the public.
Mr. Chair, I don't think I had any requests on this item, and I'm not seeing from people attending that it would be related to this item.
Okay, very well. I'll accept that. So now, are there any further comments relative to some concerns that staff might have? Those being the duration of the pit operation if passed, any dollar amounts required for a bond or surety of some manner, and the hours of operation. Those are the subjects I'd like to hear from the board about, please. And we'll start with Mr. Bravender, if you're ready to comment on anything.
I think the hours of operation being consistent with other pits. What is it, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
Correct.
And that would be 5 days a week?
Well, we haven't addressed.
That isn't in the,
weekends. We assume they don't operate on Sunday, but this doesn't have a listing for any restrictions on Saturdays.
okay. Well, I don't have a problem with Saturday either. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Was there only comments, Mr. Bravender?
Only comment at this time.
Well, Felger has no comments at this time other than to get more clear on any sort of a bond that may or may not be required. Sean, could you kind of address that a little bit more in
Yes,
in
Mr.
depth?
Mayor. So rule of thumb, over the years, we've been doing $1,000 an acre. This is approximately 17 acres. No processing from the pit. Recently, you had that Jake's Excavating across from the Marysville Township Hall for mining. That one, we came up with just a round number, not based on acreage, of a $50,000 letter of credit. The one other issue would be the duration of the permit. We just don't leave them open-ended. The request is for 5 years, I believe. Recent one, Jake's, we did for 2 years. Other ones have been longer and shorter, depending on how the planning commission felt.
The township will only give me a 3-year.
I can hear you, Jan. Mr. Chair, I believe Jan has a comment.
Very well. Yes, Jan?
Well, yes, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I could hear what was going on from the beginning of the meeting, but I had to hang up and call back in so that people could hear me. I was here for all the votes, but if you didn't hear me, please accept my apology. I don't know what happened.
No problem, Jan.
In any event, I would like to just make a comment on the bond. I would think that we would want to have something comparable to the last. And I support that, and I also would like clarification about the last that he gave you. Was that based on the acreage then? Was the $50,000 number?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Rule of thumb over the years has been $1,000 an acre. So in this case, approximately 17 acres, $15,000 to $20,000 a letter of credit. The last mining operation, Jake's, was similar but smaller in acreage. We arrived at a $50,000 amount. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how we arrived at that exact number, other than since the acreage was small, the planning commission probably didn't feel comfortable with a $10,000 letter of credit.
May I speak, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I think we should go along with what we did the last time around. bond issue based on the uncertainty of the economy. That would be my opinion.
Thank you. Charlie, you have any comments?
Just that I don't remember even doing the 50,000. That seems excessive for that amount, so I would be okay with a less bond and somewhere that, like Sean said, the 15 or 20.
Mr. Malberg?
I'd probably support something higher than the 15,000, just because I don't think we could even mobilize people out there to do any work if we had to exercise on that bond. I don't have a problem with the 50. I'd be willing to entertain why it's excessive, but if we needed to draw on it, I just don't think the 15,000 bucks is just going to get anything done.
All right, very well. And I don't quite remember this is the chair speaking. I don't quite remember the issue on Jake's, I believe, what the details were on that either. Perhaps it was because it was closer to the road, I can't remember. But in this case, I have to ask Mr. Kreiser, in what form are these sureties or guarantees or bonds, how are they acquired? Is it something that the individual has to actually put up front or guarantee it could be put up front or what? Mr. Kreiser, could you give me more details on that, please?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is something that we require to be put up front before mining starts. So they have to get the security before they haul the first truckload of gravel out of there.
Is that an actual cash deposit or simply a guarantee?
I would love a cash deposit. That's better than a bond or a letter of credit any day, but generally
I got a question.
most applicants do not put cash up. I prefer a letter of credit over a bond every day if we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Kreiser. The applicant wishes to speak at this time, and he has the floor.
The township requires a bond. I'm assuming I'm not gonna have to take out two bonds. Is one bond between the county and the township sufficient?
Sean or,
Chair, I can interject here. I can interject here, Mr. Chair. Generally, what happens is, if the county requires 50,000, or let's say the township only requires 10, they would consider our bond usually as part of theirs. That's usually how it works out, at least when we do development agreements. This is Rockford Township. I don't know what security they required or what agreements they may be having to enter into, but generally we work it out, so there's only one, at least at the county level.
thank you, Mr. Kreiser. So what is officially the bond amount that the township requires? Does anyone know that?
I know that.
Sean?
Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing it specifically spelled out on the response form. Maybe the applicant can provide some input. I do know Rockford Township enacted a standalone mining ordinance, so they might have a provision spelled out they're addressing at a later date, but I don't have it in front of me.
Very well. The applicant wishes to speak at this time.
Yeah, the township new ordinance is $5,000 an acre for the bond, and they also require $10,000 in cash. That's their new ordinance.
5,000 an acre.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, this.
I was just going to say if the township is requiring that kind of a bond and cash deposit, whatever, we probably could forego the bond and ask the county, because they have their own ordinance. I guess we could ask Attorney Kreiser about that.
Mr. Kreiser?
Chair, Commissioner Burrell, requiring up to $95,000 to be on deposit between a bond and cash. So it probably is something that's part of the ordinance, so maybe we just want to try to make that be a condition that they have to comply with the bond and security requirements of Rockford Township pursuant to their ordinance.
I think we'd be good at that. No, if she was just, syncing up with the township and making sure that's done. At the county level, we have a little bit more control of following up, so we'll have to make sure that's done.
So everyone, this is the chair speaking. I'll reiterate then that perhaps in the motion, it would be stated that the applicant comply with Rockford Township's bond guarantee surety measures, and the county, through planning and zoning, would coordinate with Rockford Township to ensure that we have some measure of control. Is that kind of where we're at, Sean?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, very well. All right, once again, I'll ask if there's anyone from the public who wish to speak on this.
Mr. Chair?
All right, I'm assuming there are still no one out there that wish to speak relative to this. Mr. Bravender, you have the floor.
I have a question about the bond. If the township is requiring this already, why is the county have to be involved with that?
If I can take this, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bradford, we need to make it a condition of our conditional use permits, just that they comply with that, just so that we can enforce it as part of our conditional use permit at the end.
Okay,
So we have a condition in there requiring it.
thank you. I understand that part of it. I have no problem with that. Thank you.
All right, did I hear Jan wishing to have the floor?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I heard somebody in the background addressing you, wanting the floor, but you didn't recognize it. I don't know who it was.
Is perhaps the applicant?
Jan, the applicant spoke to the terms of the bond, which through Rockford Township was $5,000 an acre plus $10,000 in cash.
Heard that, but when we were asked, somebody in the background, he didn't like that.
Oh,
Based on my experience with having,
Jan, I believe that was Mr. Bravender that might have uttered something. But Jan, on another note, could you turn up the volume on your phone or something? Because I am having difficulty hearing your comments, if you would, please.
well, I don't have a volume control on my phone, I'm on a landline, but I'll try to speak louder. Can you
Okay.
hear me better now?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Much,
whatever you did there, Jan, was about double.
much better.
Okay.
Thank you, Jan.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you for pointing that out.
All right, now, as long as everyone, all the board members have said their piece, unless there is something, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have one other point.
Yes, go ahead, Jan.
In the motion, would we give a time frame for the conditional use permit? What was that?
I didn't
Would
get
it have to be renewed? How long is it good for?
the duration you're speaking of, is that correct?
Pardon?
Are you talking about the duration of the mining operation, the proposed mining operation?
Yeah, so the conditional use permit, how long is the conditional use permit good for?
Well, the motion here, as suggested, states December 31st, 2022, which would involve probably none of this year's season, but more likely active in the years 2021 and 2022, 2 seasons, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. The chair,
Mr. Chair?
yes, Charlie.
I don't see a proposed motion on this, Sean. If, maybe you or Attorney Kreiser could do that, you know, with a motion. I think a 3-year term would be good, and if the rest of the board wants to, I'm okay with that. And then just using the township bond, and what was the other concern, the hours of operation, 7 to 7. Monday through Saturday.
So Charlie, we do have a proposed motion. It was on the final report. It was a large document, so you might not have been able to download that yet. So I'm willing to read the proposed motion with the modifications you made, and then you can take it from there.
Okay, thank you.
And this is with your 3-year notation. A motion could be to approve a conditional use permit for a mining operation for 3 years to expire December 31st, 2023, according to the plans provided by Otto Associates, project number 19-0559, and dated June 30th, 2020, with the following conditions. 1, no crushing, washing, or bituminous plant is included with this permit. Number 2, all requirements of the Wright County Highway Department for access to County Road 32 be followed. 3, all requirements of the Wright County Soil and Water Conservation District for the pit road through the wetland areas be followed. 4, a financial guarantee for reclamation for Rockford Township ordinance be taken out. 5, hours of operation must be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. 6, all other requirements of the Wright County Code of Ordinances must be followed for dust and noise control and reclamation.
Mr. Chair, if I could add number 7 onto that, just to state that this is an interim use permit. As stated, the Wright County Code of Ordinances and the Rockford Township Code of Ordinances.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion with the change from Attorney Kreiser as well.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if Sean missed it, but I think we had a Monday through Saturday for the kids.
Is that correct, Sean?
That wasn't part of the original motion, but implied, I would suggest you add that with number 5, days of operation, Monday through Saturday, with hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m.
I would like that, Mr. Chair. Okay with the second.
Okay, very well. Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Here, a second?
Mr. Bravender seconds it. Okay, any further discussion? All right,
Mr. Chair, I just have a question.
sure.
Did Mr. Burrell make the motion and second the motion? Or who made the first motion?
Mr. Burrell did.
Made the motion.
Mr. Burrell.
Burrell made the motion, and who seconded it then?
Mr. Bravender.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, we'll start with Mr. Moenberg on his end of the table. All those in favor, state your name and vote, please.
Malberg, aye.
Thompson, aye.
Burrell, aye.
Felger, aye.
Bravender, aye.
Very well, motion passes. Best wishes to you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Good. We will have a moment
for your
pause
patience.
here, ladies and gentlemen of the board, because we will be cleaning up the table here for our next applicant.
Yes, I will be.
Mr. Bogema, could you, and your assistant here, please,
My wife,
please state, your wife, please state your names and address for the secretary, please?
yep, Jason Bolgama and Monica Bolgama. Address is 9146 Huber Avenue, Southwest, Howard Lake, Minnesota.
Please have a seat. All right, Sean, would you care to give us a recap on this, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, you conducted a site inspection, and I hope that proved helpful to see the site. The property has been developed into lakeshore lots. One of the conditions of the TUP was to leave the wetland area between the ice ridge or the shoreline and the low area of the lots natural and untouched. The request by the applicant is to remove / modify that condition. I think the input of staff is this is one direction or the other. The Planning Commission needs to consider, are they going to remove the condition conditional on soil and water and DNR regulations still being in place, or leaving the condition as stated? With that, I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission.
Very well, thank you, Sean. Mr. Bogema and Mrs. Bogema, would you care to add anything to that narrative?
I don't think so. I think Sean kind of summarized it up for us right there. We're just looking to get access to the lake so we can use it. And
Maybe you could give us a little history, what's been going on there with the ice damage and all that, kind of recap of what the situation there is and why you're proposing this.
This is our first year at the house. We bought it last September, so we're learning things as we go. But talking to the neighbors, the history on this, I think before it was even developed, there was no ridge and there was no trees down there. The local farmer used to cut grass all the way to the lake. But over time, the trees grew, and then the ice ridge pushed in at some point and created that berm. And now, being that it's flatter down there below the developed hill line where the houses are, it's basically a spring area flood zone with that berm being in place that doesn't let the water get out, so it just sits there. And then once it's all dried up, like now, I got perfect mowable grass. But it just, the berm being in place doesn't allow the water to escape in the spring. And then it doesn't allow us to get the dock and our stuff from the lake in because there's a 3 or 4 foot mound.
Right. And then it's my understanding, sir, that this is a condition that's applicable to all of those lots, so to speak,
Yes.
throughout?
Yep, all 9 lots along that adjacent part of the lake have the same language. And that's part of me being here is to, I guess all of our language is tied together in that development.
Sure.
Block 1. So we're all the property owners. I have all the applicant signatures from all the other property owners as well, and so does Sean. I've talked to them all, and they all do at some point, maybe not this year, maybe 10 years from now, at some point, they would like the opportunity to have access, to do something to get access to the lake.
Okay, very well. Now, do we have any questions of the applicant from the board members? Other than, if you don't, I will go to see if there's any public comment. Any questions of the applicant from our board members, please? Well, hearing none, then I would ask, are there any members of the public who are joining us today remotely wish to speak on this subject? If you do, don't forget to unmute your device.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe we have anybody in attendance on this item.
Very well, Sean, thank you. Well, then I will bring it back up to the board here. Any more questions of the individual applicants here, please, from the board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Charlie.
do we have a proposed motion, or I just see that the action is to remove the language and just leave it up to the soil and water? Is that the other, do we don't have a formal motion? Okay.
Commissioner Burrow, I think you just made the motion.
That's what I would like to do. I'd like to remove the stipulation that we have in there and just say that, soil and water, rules be followed.
Can I add DNR too?
DNR.
I don't think there's a reason to have DNR, is there?
Well, if there isn't, there isn't, but if they do get below or in the lake bed level, perhaps not in the, it's implied, I guess if something comes up with a lake, the DNR would have to review it.
Just don't see where anything here would be affecting other than soil and water. I don't think we're going to be affecting the level of the lake or anything. Mr. Chair, I'd make that as a motion then to remove that restrictive language that we had in there and just say that soil and water rules be followed.
Very well, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Bravender seconds the motion. Any further discussion, ladies and gentlemen?
I have a question for you, Charlie. As far as the DNR involvement, is that required because of the removal of the berm or not? That was my only question on that.
I guess so, Commissioner Bravender, my point is, if whether we put it in a traditional use permit or not, if there's DNR issues, they have to be followed. If there's soil water issues, they have to be followed. It's irrespective of what our conditional use permit is for dividing the lot. I think we have one, the one that we just did, we kind of did the same thing, and I have that circle for when that motion comes up. It's where we say in there that no wetland will be impacted, and then all soil water rules be followed. And that's all we have to do is say all soil water rules be followed, because sometimes they do grant an exception. They allow some de minimis impact on a wetland, and then the way that ruling is, that when we make a conditional use permit, say you can't affect it, and if soil water allows it later, why did we do that? I mean, just say that soil water rules have to be followed, then if somebody feels strongly that you want to put DNR in there, I mean, it's implied anyway. You have to, no matter whether it's a conditional use permit or not, you have to follow wetland rules, and then you have to follow DNR rules.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Jan?
Yes, Jan.
I understand what you're saying, Charlie, but I don't understand exactly why we shouldn't put it in there. I don't see that there's any harm of it. It's better to maybe be safe than sorry in case something that unforeseeable comes up that we haven't considered at this point, to be able to say, well, we did consider this and we felt that they should be acknowledged. I would be in favor of amending the motion to the DNR. And when it's appropriate, I would like the opportunity to do that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Charlie.
I said I'm fine. I said I just don't see the need for putting it in there. It's implied that we have land. I don't care if, like I said, if these people have to get a conditional use permit to do this division, but it doesn't matter if somebody went through that or not. They have to follow the rules and the laws of the state. But if it makes Jan more comfortable, I'm okay with putting it in there, just saying all DNR and soil water rules have to be followed. That's what I was all saying anyway. But what we did in the original motion, not what we did, but a previous board just said it can't be touched. And then now if soil and water says, yeah, we'll allow you to do X, Y, and Z, it violates our conditional use permit, and that's what the applicant, that's what this is all really about. So, Jen, if that makes you more comfortable, I'm okay with just saying DNR and soil water rules must be followed.
So are you suggesting then, Mr. Burrell, that your motion is going to change then? And did you second that?
Charles shook his head yes.
All right, and then, Mr. Bravender, that's okay with you as seconder of that motion?
Yes, it is, and I have a comment too.
And Mr. Bravender, you have some discussion.
I think what Charlie was trying to make a point of, Jan, is that soil and water can't approve something that's not okay with the DNR, so they work hand in hand. And I think that's the point he was trying to make. If I'm wrong, correct me, Charlie.
You're right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so just to keep in mind, these documents are recorded on the property, so often we put things in not as necessarily our conditions, but as informational, because not everybody knows how many layers of government are there. Not everybody knows about all these agencies, so sometimes it does help as an informational purpose.
Mr. Chair?
I'm not sure if that's our duty, but that's fine with me, I guess. Jan, you had a comment?
Yes, I agree with our staff in making that suggestion. I think it doesn't hurt anything. I think he's absolutely right when he says that not everyone is aware and attuned to who regulates who, and it's always good to have more information than less.
Thank you. Mr. Malberg, do you have any comments?
I do not.
Very well. As long as everyone has had their chance to comment, I would entertain a motion then. I believe we have a motion on, okay, the motion's on the floor. I'm sorry. All right, discussion is over. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by roll call your vote. We'll start with Mr. Bravender.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Burrell votes aye.
Thompson votes aye.
Horns and aye.
Very good, motion passes. Best of wishes to you folks.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Very well. And then now, board members, we'll have a moment, pause a moment until we clean up
Charlie
the...
was asking to be recognized.
Oh, Charlie, did you have something to ask?
Well, I just wanted to make a statement or whatever, because there's a whole lot of other laws that people with their own property in the state of Minnesota have to follow. I mean, we can't have buried bodies out there. We can't be burning stuff. There's all kinds of laws. So I mean, if we're going to do this, we could just say that all the laws of the county, township, and state must be followed when we do these conditional use permits. I mean, do we have to remind people of everything? Because I don't get reminded of it on my farm, but if I did something wrong, I would probably get in trouble, right?
Right, I would agree, Mr. Burrell.
Sometimes.
I would agree, if you're doing something wrong, they'll be on top of you like white on rice, so I agree, I don't think we have to put in every little detail. But any event, the applicants are happy, they can be on their way, and best wishes to you all.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
We'll have a pause here for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, for cleanup. please. I'll be with you momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Are you Michael?
Yeah, can I take this off?
All right, our,
Thank you.
yes, our next item on the agenda is Mr. Michael DeZiel. Welcome. Could you please state your name and address for the secretary, please?
Yes, thank you. It's Michael DeZiel, 1612 Third Avenue Northeast, Buffalo, Minnesota.
Very well, thank you. Sean, what have we got going on this applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this property was previously the Humane Society and then converted into a private kennel. The Planning Commission did a site inspection at that time. After a few years of operation as a kennel, the property owners came in and requested the property be rezoned to industrial, which it was. At this time, a prospective buyer is looking at purchasing this property and running a heating and cooling business from the property, pretty much as the property sits, the existing building, outbuildings, parking lot, and access. I will turn it over to the chair and the applicant to further discuss the operation.
Very well, thank you, Sean. Mr. DeZiel, would you care to expand on that narrative, please?
Not a whole lot, other than to say, as I put in my description of our company, we don't do any work on site. We do, we do all of our work in homes. We don't build anything on site. There's no warehouse. There's nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, there's very few customers that ever come to our door. We don't have a showroom or anything like that.
Right, right. So would it be fair to say then, sir, that your employees, they come, their trucks are parked there and they come there and park and then they go off to their respective jobs, or how does that work?
Some of them, yeah. So the technicians would be dispatched straight from home. And only the installers would come to the shop every day to get in their trucks and go to the project.
I see, okay, very well. Is there anyone from the public calling in remotely that would wish to speak on this subject, this applicant's petition? Sean, do you have any record of anyone calling in on this particular application?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. No, I do not have any people requesting to attend this meeting.
Okay, very well. Well, then we'll bring it up to the board members here for further questions of the applicant, if you wish. We can start with Mr. Malberg's end of the table, please.
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
This is Jan Thompson. No questions, Mr. Chair.
Very well, thank you.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
I have a question of the applicant. Are there garage facilities on the site for your vehicles, or?
No.
Okay, what about parking during the day? Is there going to be a lot of trucks and cars?
Well, as I said in my description, I mean, there's 42 parking spaces there. We'll use a small fraction of them, you know.
All right, very well.
Yeah, there's a lot of space there.
Good. Mr. Bravender,
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chair.
very well.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a conditional use permit to operate HVAC business out of the existing site in accord with the narrative and plans held on file.
Okay, thank you.
Malberg seconds.
Very well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right. Those wishing to vote on this, which end of the table did I do it from last time? Anyway, we'll start with Mr. Bravender's end.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Brown votes aye.
Thompson votes aye.
Malberg denied.
Very good. Motion passes. Thank you, sir, for your time, and best wishes to you.
Thank you, everybody.
You bet. We'll take a brief pause here to clean up between applicants at the table. Our next applicant's Jamie L. Pribble. And ladies, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Jamie Pribble, 3286 37th Street Northwest, Maple Lake.
Julie Pribble, 3286 37th Street Northwest, Maple Lake.
Okay, very well. And if I might add, ladies, you can speak right into this microphone here, and that's the one that's broadcast on the WebEx. So anyway, Sean, what have we got going on the Pribble application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, the properties are located in Maple Lake Township. I think this is the best exhibit. This is one parcel with a railroad through it. So this is one overall parcel with 2 entitlements left on it. This is the other parcel with no entitlements. Since they are not contiguous, it takes a planning commission conditional use permit to transfer entitlements owned in common that are not contiguous. So the request is to take one of the entitlements from this parcel, transfer it to this parcel. As you can see from the prime soils map, a lot of the property overall is in as good farmland. One of the main criteria for the planning commission with transferring entitlements is usually to preserve farmland or put it in a less productive spot. In this case, and I'll defer to the applicants, I think there's difficulties in using entitlements on this piece because of the state highway and the lay of the land and lots that have already been split out. With that, I'll turn it over to the planning commission.
Well, thank you, Sean. Sean, one other question. Is this at the intersection roughly of County Road 37 and 55? Or am I?
No, it's east of town.
Oh, east of town,
So
okay.
here's, at the arrow is almost the public access to Maple Lake.
Oh, way over there, okay.
This is east of Maple Lake.
All right, I have my bearings now. Okay, would the applicants care to expand upon Mr. Riley's narrative of the situation?
Yes, so we'd like to move, like you said, the one entitlement from the one piece to the other. And the main reason is we're looking for a building site and we have pretty difficult access off the highway. There's about so if on the piece that we want to move it from, depending on which part of the highway you're along there, it's about a 20 to 40 foot straight drop.
I think I know where you're talking about.
Yeah, it's got a guardrail and it's straight down.
Right, and then there's been a little bit of dirt work up on the south side, up on the side of a hill? Is
So
that the
that's
property?
before the property, that's east of the property that we're talking about.
Okay,
So
very well.
That'd be right, kind of what the next field, big
Okay,
field over.
sure, I've got my bearings
Yeah.
now. Okay, are there any questions from the board members of the applicants?
Here.
Mr. Bravender has none. Anything on the table to my right? Any questions? Are there any Okay, very well. Are there any members of the public that may be calling in on this application that wish to speak?
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of anybody calling in on this one.
Very well, thank you, Sean. Well, hearing none then, is there any further questions from the board? Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Was that Charlie?
I make a motion to recommend approval of the transfer from an 146 acre parcel number 210-00-103100/10 to the 58 acre parcel number 210-000-16120/094-104/161-101 to better preserve a large agricultural land and to utilize a better area for the residents based on accessibility and topography of the property that currently existing farmstead with the following conditions. If a division is proposed using the transferred entitlement, it will be limited to 2.5 acres and need proper road frontage with approved access. Number 2, the division location will have to meet 30 feedlots. Number 3, a deed restriction must be filed, recorded, and signed by the applicant for the transfer to be complete. And it will be recorded on the parcel the entitlement is being transferred from, leaving this parcel with one entitlement. And number 4, a deed restriction is executed when the actual division takes place and will require that survey work and soil borings be completed.
Very well, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Fine.
So,
Could that last statement be repeated? I didn't get it.
Well, I just was going to ask if Charlie would read the last sentence of the.
Yeah, there's one more in the, there's one more
And
line.
ask Attorney Kreiser to read anything longer like that.
No, just the last sentence. You left out the document will also reflect the restrictions.
Just a deed, it was number 4, a deed restriction is executed when the actual division takes place and will require that survey work and soil borings be completed.
You don't have the document, this document will also reflect the restrictions based on the feedlot. You don't have that in your.
I'm pretty sure I read that about the deed
It
restriction.
might have been added to the final.
No, this was an item 4. But I got staff has one last sentence that you didn't read. It was at the very end of survey work and soil borings be completed, period. This document will also reflect the restrictions placed on the feedlot. You didn't read that last sentence.
Okay, now I'm just
So that might have been an addition from preliminary and final.
Well, it came out today. So it's just something that was in my.
Sean, should that have been on my motion or not?
Well, it should be in your packet if you're looking at the most up-to-date one. On number 4, when we're referencing the deed restriction, part of that language that goes on it is when there's reference to a feedlot. So again, we just recommended a motion that informs on our process.
Okay. I'm fine to put that on.
isn't,
I'll
Mr. Chair?
add whatever James said there at the end under the motion. It's not on my, it was not in my packet.
Okay, to reiterate, it's okay with you then, Charlie, maker of the motion, to add that last sentence, and it's okay with, who was the second individual? Or wasn't there? I'm sorry, Jan?
Well, I would say Jan better second it after adding that on.
Yeah.
Okay, did you second it, Jan?
I'll second it, adding that on.
Okay, very well. Any discussion? I believe, Mr. Bravender, you have something to discuss.
Sean, isn't that already discussed in item number 2, or division location? I'm just curious.
So number 2 just simply states a location, wherever it may be, needs to meet those setbacks. The last one states when that division is done, when they pick the location, they do that actual document, the deed restriction with the feedlot language.
Okay. Thank you.
I would agree there's a lot of division and feedlot words.
Satisfied, Mr. Burrell, or Mr. Bravender?
Satisfied.
Okay, very well.
Can
Any
I
further
ask a
discussion?
question? Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
yes, ma'am.
That's a lot of words, and it's, a little crackly, it's hard to understand. Did he say that any division would be limited to 2.5 acres then?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, to answer the question, if you can see the current slide, because the farm is prime farmland, it's limited to 2.5 acres for the size of the division without a variance. And this is a feedlot, so a house needs to meet the feedlot setbacks. So when a division is done, that document for division will have to reflect the 2.5 acres and being able to meet the feedlot setback with a house.
But we can request a variance if we want to for more than the 2.5.
Yeah, at this time, the request is simply to move an entitlement. from
Correct,
here.
I'm just checking because I don't want to move it if we can't request that.
So over here,
Okay,
so you could not use that entitlement, you could do a division per the standards,
yeah,
or you could explore other options.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that that's, an option down the road.
No, it does not eliminate you trying to do other things.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're
Appreciate it.
satisfied?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, very well, very well. Any further discussion on this motion? All right, we'll start with our voting. We'll start at Mr. Malberg's end of the table, please.
Commissioner Mulberger is aye.
Thompson, aye.
Earl votes aye.
Felger, aye.
Bravender, aye.
Okay, very well, motion passes. There you are,
Thank you.
ladies.
So, Mr. Chair, we want to look for Mr. Fisher in the audience
Yes.
or in the hallway.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies, thank you, and best wishes to you.
Thank you for answering the question. Appreciate it.
Shirley. We'll take a moment here, ladies and gentlemen. On the agenda today, we're backing up to Mr. Noah Fisher, representing Hoffman Construction. Sean, what have we got going here now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you to Noah for driving down. Sorry for the glitch on the WebEx. You were muted and did not unmute, so we weren't able to hear you.
Yeah, no worries.
This item is continued for a site inspection. The request is to bring in materials from the Interstate 94 project and fill in this area of the property. I think one of the things we discussed last time was what can and can't be done on the unique basement walls that were left from a project not completed. Our suggested motion in number 2 is suggesting that all requirements of PCA be met. I guess the best way I can summarize it, I think we will be able to do this project and document it and provide proper allowances, not having to have unreasonable removal of materials. I think we'll be able to arrive at a place where things can be properly backfilled.
Mr. Hoffman, would you, or Mr. Fisher, would you care to expand on that narrative?
Yeah, so we met out there and kind of just went through it, looked at everything. I don't think there's any big concerns out there at all. One thing was that we weren't allowed to touch the walls. If we do break those walls or collapse them in, that we have to dispose of those. We can't just bury them. So if we leave them in place, we can leave them. If we collapse them in, then we have to remove them.
And that's according to whom?
That's our environmental team from American Engineering and Testing,
I see.
AET.
And they are what, following NPCA guidelines, rules?
Yes,
What?
I believe so, yep. Because we have the Corps of Engineers and a few other permitting that we have to follow, so.
So, just for example, you break part of that wall. That means you remove part of the wall or the entire remaining wall?
I remove whatever chunk was
Okay,
collapsed
the
in.
broken part off.
Yep.
Okay, very
Now,
well.
we expect that there is gonna have to be some, it's a 60,000 pound dozer, so we're gonna break something. So
Sure.
we're gonna have a dump truck there to get rid of anything that is loose.
Okay, very well. Are there any other questions from the board members before I go to the public? Well, hearing none, I will ask if there are anyone out there who may be calling in, watching remotely, that would like to address this applicant's petition.
Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of anybody calling in on this item.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Riley. Well, then let's bring it back up here. Are there any questions of the applicant? We'll start on Mr. Malberg's end of the table.
No, sir.
Absolutely no.
Mr. Chair, the only thing that I wanted to mention, and I did it earlier, on condition number 1, just remove that wetlands must not be impacted and just leave it where the motion says all requirements of right soil water must be met. Otherwise, I have no other comment.
All right. The chair has no further comment. Mr. Bravender.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Mr. Bravender's prepared to make a motion. Very well.
I'd like to approve the placement of fill in accord with the plan presented with the following conditions. Number 1, all requirements of the Wright County Soil and Water Conservation District must be met. Number 2, all requirements of the MPCA must be met regarding the burying of the in-place basement walls. Number 3, only clean fill is allowed. This motion will be filed in the county recorder's office, so any future title search will reveal the existence of the buried concrete structure if that is what occurs.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Malberg will second.
Malberg seconds it. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? All right. All those voting on the matter, we'll start with Mr. Bravender's end of the table. Please.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Burrow votes aye.
Absolutely aye.
Malberg, aye.
Very well. Motion passes. Best wishes to you, sir.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Talk to you. We'll take a few moments here. Welcome. Please state your full name and address for the secretary, please.
Kyle Asheville, 13140, County Road 35 West, Cokato.
Very well, thank you. Sean?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as housekeeping, I know there are people joining the meeting via WebEx for this item, as I can see them signed on. Just to make sure you understand, by default, you are muted. There is a red microphone at the bottom of your screen with a line through it. When you want to talk, you need to unmute yourself. When you open it for public comment, if I don't hear anybody, at the risk of feedback, I will unmute everybody just to make sure we haven't missed anybody. Mr. Chair, the request is to run a commercial outdoor recreation to operate 5 training sessions, 5 days per session at the property. The property is the agriculture. The land use plan for agriculture. Already has an existing house and outbuildings. The track and use is already in place because it's used as a personal motocross track. We do not regulate or permit the personal use of the property for riding motocross bikes. This is simply about the commercial use, the training, the opening up of the property to a trainer and the public for using the motocross track. With that, I will turn it over to the chair and the applicant to describe the use.
Very well, thank you, Sean. Mr. Ashwell, would you care to expand upon that narrative?
Yeah, we'd like to have a trainer come up, typically from down south, and he needs to be hired, so it takes 8 to 15 people to be able to afford to have a trainer come up and train the kids for motocross. And there's really nowhere to do it other than a private track like this. During the weekdays, there's tracks around, but they're only open on the weekends. And I mean, that's about the extent of it, I guess, just to train between 8 to 15 kids a few times a summer, typically before the bigger races.
Sure, sure. And it's in my understanding by your application that you're requesting, it looks like 5 sessions per year. And each session is what, 5 days long?
Yeah, 5 days long, from the hours of typically 9 to 3, 10 to 4, so very close to that.
All right. So we're looking at 25 days.
Yeah, Monday through Fridays, no weekends.
Okay, very well. All right. Well, is there anything else from the board that you would like to ask Mr. Ashwell? Well, then we will go to the public. Now, Sean, could you help us out there? We would ask for public input at this time.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, I'll again state you need to unmute yourself. For the people I recognize for this item, I am going to just unmute everybody and hopefully we don't have feedback. I'm going to do that at this moment.
You want to hear one? The video, or they want them to see you?
Yeah, so you can turn your cameras on too. You don't necessarily have to. The audio is the key thing. So public testimony is open at this time. The Kyle Ashwell request, if you want to be recognized by the chair, I would suggest you just simply say, Mr. Chair, tell us your name and then make your comment.
Is this for the public? Can you speak now?
Correct. What's your name, sir?
My name is Roger Pesky, and my wife's with me, Janet Pesky. And what we've got is, I've been, inside the track with this money, but I'm concerned about 5 days because we own the land around, and I've got some lakes on both corners. I have Lakeshore,
And we're talking about the noise, and it gets quite loud, and I was thinking that 5 days is just pushing the envelope too far. And it's just a little bit more than, I've been fine with some of his personal stuff, but I'm concerned about a commercial thing. Kyle mentioned that he would only do it 3 days, but 3 weeks, but this right is for 5, and I'm not going there. That's my thought, because we're getting a lot of noise out of those bikes. And I don't know who would police the noise of it, you know, because when kids get training sessions, all kids like to get the most power out of their bikes, and it's quite loud for all the neighbors around. And that's kind of where we're sitting. You want to say something?
Yeah, this is Janet Keskey speaking, and I submitted a letter to you. Are you going to read that letter out so everybody hears?
Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, and to the question, we have received a number of correspondence by paper. We provide that in a staff report for the Planning Commission to read. We don't read those out loud. If you want to summarize or make comments beyond the letter, that's appropriate.
Okay, so you're not going to read what my comments were, so that everybody is informed.
Correct. The Planning Commission has read those comments. They've already read them, and so has staff. They don't read them again verbatim. So we suggest people, they either summarize and emphasize their concerns, or if there's additional comments they want to make.
Okay, well, I would like everybody to be aware that I asked questions that were quite pertinent to us as neighbors. And one of the things is that the volume, we've had a number of motorcycles there, has been excruciating. It's very shrieking amount of noise, and it depends. Sometimes they're done quickly, and sometimes they are way too long. So, being that this is such an irritation, and we have not said anything because Kyle has kept it, the amount of days and participants to a minimum. But now he's like pushing the envelope here saying 25 days, which would be 5 weeks of summer. Well, you're talking out of 12 weeks of summer, he's taking almost half of it. Now, as Roger had mentioned, that we have Lakeshore there, and we have a place in which we're planning to build. We're directly seated right on top of this course. And I had wondered that this would affect our property value when our summers are cut short under this kind of duress. Also, my concern was that Mud Lake is a natural resource lake, and that the EPA is there to protect these lakes. And I also know that I have read studies that noise definitely has an effect on plants and water. And these studies can be looked up scientifically. And I'm sure maybe the EPA would have an idea of what's out there. But as an example of being out on the lake, 2 years ago, my friend and I were fishing. A number of motorcycles started. My friend had grabbed her ears and stated, "How can you stand this? How long does this last?" Well, I responded by just saying, well, it's not every day. And then we, of course, in turn had to leave the lake. Well, we've got fishermen every day. And particularly, we have them on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays because people take time off to come out there and fish. So I'm sure if we had to leave and that kind of noise was going across the lake, it would affect those that come onto the lake through the park that's situated there on County Road 4. So would actually have an effect on more than just the local people that live there, here by the track. And as far as I'm concerned, there's too many people living around this track to have this kind of a commercial business here. And you add that to where do these people stay? They're going to have overnight. There's all kinds of questions there as to how they're going to host all of this and how many are they hosting. And I kind of ended my letter, I said, I stay inside when it hurts my ears. Sometimes they only have a couple bites and it doesn't bother me at all. But if they have a lot, it does hurt my ears. So what I do is I have to stay inside, or I have to leave the farm literally and go somewhere else until it's over. And I've been thinking that, you know, these kids that Kyle has been helping out so far, that they need to learn to ride, and they can ride, but have it, I can't see it being more than what we're already doing. And I think there's enough there that the local boys and people here in the area can come and learn. But I'm not all for taking them from all over the country or other states or to promote a big business here. Or this is not where it is located very well. So we have a natural resource lake that's being affected. We have fishermen and people down in the park that's being affected. And we have a lot of neighbors around that are being affected. And I would not want to see this go any further than Kyle is already doing for the youth around here. And that's my thoughts at this time. I may have more thoughts from what I hear from others as to how many hours a day and how many days, or not have it at all, period. So I'll end it right there and let somebody else give their thoughts on how it affects them.
Well, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Keski. This is Ken Felger, the chairman, or the vice chair conducting the meeting today. Thank you for your input. Now, I suspect on issues like this, we may very well go visit the site. So I would like to remind you, as well as all others that may be listening, that we may be going out to have what we call a site inspection. We don't necessarily take, I should correct myself, we will not take any testimony at the time, but you're certainly welcome, should it come to that, should it come to a a site inspection, that you're welcome to come. And if we do have a site inspection, that may very well mean that we have continued it for the next upcoming meeting. So I would suggest you stay on the line and listen to our proceedings if you wish to see what ultimately occurs here on this application here today. So now, saying that, are there any others in the public realm out there listening remotely that would like to comment on this applicant's petition? I'll take those now.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Sean.
can I just sort of work through the names and who I see just to make sure? Perhaps they don't want to speak, but I just want to make sure. I see a Darren Grangroff. Was curious if you wanted to make any public testimony. If so, you need to unmute your microphone, or I can do that for you. Darren, can you hear us, and did you want to weigh in? Okay, I'm trying. Now I'll go to the next person. I had a Jane that I sent an invite to. Did you have any comments on the Ashwell request? I think it was Jane O'Shea.
O'Shea.
O'Shea, I'm sorry. Mrs. O'Shea, did you have any comments?
See that she's online, but, and her microphone is unmuted. And she had her picture up before, but, I'm not sure.
Right, and I've done my best. I can't say for a fact or not for the next item. So let me just work through a few more here. Maybe we just did not have everybody sign in that I sent invites to. I'm going to unmute a number of people just to be safe.
Jane did just send a message chat that she's trying to speak, but we're not hearing her.
Okay, what was that, Janet?
Jane O'Shea.
Oh, okay. Interesting. If I
Muted, but
I have her unmuted. Is your microphone on your computer? Make sure your actual computer microphone is not muted. Seeing anything, Charlie, or?
well, it's just that she said, she's unmuted, but we cannot hear her. And then how do I speak? She said, I said it in English. But, no. And then she says, where is the microphone? Unless it's an external microphone, Jane, the computer should pick it up.
Well, I'm speculating her microphone is off on the computer. So it's usually at the bottom right or on your, even your control panel.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Oh, I just went off and reconnected my audio, sorry. For some reason it wasn't working, I had unmuted, but you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Jane O'Shea, and if you look at the map that you guys have up, I live on the west side with my husband Peter and our two sons of Worm Lake. I appreciate all the comments from Mrs. Gatsky, and I guess I echo what she has to say. Kyle, we've had a lot of discussions with Kyle about the track. We had a sort of verbal agreement that it was going to be Monday or Sundays and Wednesdays they were going to ride, and as much as Mrs. Katsky says, none of us like the noise. We hate the noise. We kind of had a uneasy agreement that that's what was going to happen. And about 4 weeks ago, something came up on social media that they were going to run a clinic there. And when I contacted planning and zoning, I understood that that was not legal without this meeting. And I said to Kyle, yeah, 3 days we could handle, but we need to go through the proper channels and you need to get a permit. But the option of doing 5-day clinics over the summer is, as Mrs. Ketsky and Mr. Ketsky said, is completely unacceptable. And the amount of noise that we will be not enjoying through the summer will be out of control. So I'm using strong language, but my husband wears ear protection outside when the motor cross track is going on. If you look at where the track is and where we live, that noise comes across the lake, and it's highly unpleasant. And we are also very concerned about our property values. We've been watching this track get bigger and bigger over the summer. There's been a lot of equipment there making the jumps higher and things bigger. And I just think it's unacceptable that Kyle wants to run 25 more days of noise there and make money off of it at the expense of everyone that lives around him. I would be okay with 1 clinic, maybe 2 clinics in the summer of 3 days, and that is about all I would accept. 25 days, on top of the 56 days that he already has sort of been given permission to ride. Doing the math, that's 81 days over 7 months that we have to listen to motocross. Very close.
All right, Mrs. O'Shea, this is Ken Felger, the Vice Chair. Thank you for your comments. Did you hear the comment I made about the potential for a site visit by the Board of Planning and Zoning Board Commissioners?
I did hear that.
Okay, very well. So that may occur, and therefore this meeting may be continued until the next board meeting, so stay tuned. If you wish to find out when a potential site inspection may occur, we as commissioners will decide that at the very end of today's meeting. Or you can call the Planning and Zoning Office if indeed this does occur here with the decision to actually do a site inspection. So anyway, stay tuned, and thank you for your comments. Sean, I'll ask if you could check if there's anyone else in the public domain that would like to comment.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm still seeing Aaron. If he doesn't want to speak, I don't want to make him speak, but I just want to make absolutely sure. Aaron, did you have any comments, or you're just watching the meeting? Okay, let me scroll through anybody else here. Not seeing anybody else, and I'm going to have to just rely on them.
Janet Questing has a comment when it will work in.
Okay, I'm going to have to rely for anybody else that hasn't spoke yet to, you have to unmute and speak up if you want to make comments.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing anybody else, Mr. Chair, and it sounded like the Keskis wanted to make a follow-up comment.
All right, well, the chair will allow that. Mr. and Mrs. Keski, go ahead.
We have a neighbor right next door that is directly south, right on the same highway, not too many feet from the track, Rosenquist. Now, he cannot attend this, and he may have a letter there. But if he would like to speak, will he be able to do this with the board before you have this site inspection? Or is he forever silent?
Well, first of all, Mrs. Keski, we haven't decided if we're going to be doing a site inspection. So therefore, if we don't do a site inspection, obviously there may be a decision here made today to approve or disapprove this applicant. So we'll see how it goes here today, so stay tuned.
To speak to the question, Mr. Chair, we did receive comment from the Rosenquist. That's in your packets. We have their detailed response. I sent an invite to the WebEx, but I don't see them in attendance, so they probably weren't able to. We don't have a means for neighbors to call up the planning commission outside of the public hearing. So if this is continued, they would need to join the meeting the next time if they actually wanted to speak.
I have one question, again, if you don't mind.
Very well, Mr. Keski.
Yeah, I actually did talk to Kyle, and I see that we are looking at 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 days. And he said at that time that he was looking at 3 sessions, kind of this verbally. But my thought is, well, if that's the case, then let's not go 5, go what you're going to ask for. Because people can change their mind once it's approved. Going by word is one thing, but he said, oh, I think maybe I'll go 5 because I'm approved. Well, I'm not for them.
Well, that's
just the way I'm looking at it.
That may very well be speculation, Mr. Keski, so we'll just well, excuse me.
You never know. If it's 5 days and you're approved, then you're approved. Then the word, you send this letter so we can voice our opinion. That was why we got it in the first place.
Indeed. And what I'm going to ask you is simply, don't repeat anything that's been said before. It's kind of unnecessary. So
Okay. Well, we got it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's where we're sitting.
Very well.
Has the EPA been contacted on their thoughts of having the track next to Mud Lake?
We do not notify the EPA this type of land use.
No. Oh, who does?
I'm not aware of any EPA permitting requirements on this type of land use. Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sean, are there any other further public comments that you're aware of?
I see one of the person's mic was unmuted, Mr. Darren Grangross, so I'm not sure if he's wanting to speak or he's just unmuted.
Okay. Well, could we ask the Keskis if they're completed with their comments to mute their microphone, please?
Well, this is Tim O'Brien. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. O'Brien, my name is Ken. I'm the vice chair. I can hear you, but we have someone else talking in the background. Please, let's yield to Mr. O'Brien, is it, to make his public comments. All others, mute your microphones. If you wish to speak later, if you're a new individual speaking, unmute your microphone. So please, Mr. O'Brien, go ahead.
Hi, my wife and I, Karina Berger, own the property directly north of this, of Kyle. And we've spoken to Kyle and we've sent a letter into to you for review. We also favor a shorter time span than the 5 that are in this official request. And also we prefer to have the time frame during those days specified in here. And I think Kyle actually laid some of that out in his letter to you for his request. So, but we think that it's important to have those in there.
Very well. Anything else, sir?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Mr. O'Brien, did you happen to hear my comment about a potential here for continuing this to the
Yes,
next?
I did.
Okay, very well. Well, stay tuned, please. And if you're done speaking, making your comments, please unmute, or excuse me, please mute your microphone. Thank you. Okay, Sean, is Mr. Geringer, is he wishing to speak? Or Gangroth? Grangroth.
So his mic is open now. I'm unsure if he actually wanted to make comment.
Is he on video or simply audio?
Have both, have video and audio. Hopefully the microphone on his computer is not muted.
Can you kind of give him a hand signal? Yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down? Or
Darren, can you hear us? I think your microphone is muted, Darren, on your computer or the device you're using. I can see your mouth moving, but we're not hearing words. Any ideas, Charlie? You know how this stuff works better than most of us.
Can he use the chat feature? That's what I use to communicate to you guys. If he clicks on the chat feature on the lower right-hand corner, then he can type to you. At least then maybe he can try to shut his audio down and reload it, which is what I was able to access.
I think he's on like a smartphone or a
Different.
Can you hear
Okay, no problem.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience, so we can hear you.
Yeah, I was allergical and I had to take care of my kids for a while, so sorry. I put it right into the east. The track, there's no trees or anything between my place and Kyle's or the track. I don't, when you hear the noise, I don't think it's deafening. I work nights and I sleep during the day, and when there's been bikes going, I haven't noticed any sleep disruptions in my house. So I think if we all are willing to work by it and maybe do shorter terms or whatever you guys come up with, it'll be all right. But I think everyone can figure out something to complain about their neighbor if they look hard enough. So I think if we work together to be a lot better off in the future, just for everybody.
All right, sir, is any further comment?
What's that?
Mr. Grangroth, is that correct pronunciation? Do you have any further?
Grangroth,
Yeah, do you have any further comment?
As of right now, I don't think so.
Okay, very well. And I presume you heard about the potential for this item to be continued until our next regular scheduled meeting?
What was that?
There's a potential for this proceedings to be continued until the next calendar meeting for a site inspection.
Okay.
We oftentimes do site inspections on controversial issues like this one may very well be. So any event, stay tuned as to what may occur here. All right, Sean, is there anyone else out in the public realm who would like to comment by your reckoning?
Mr. Chair, I'm not recognizing anybody, and I think we would have heard by this time.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for your assistance in that regard. Now, I would like to bring it up to the board members here to inquire of Mr. Ashwill of any questions they might have. Mr.
Chair.
Bravender, yes.
Kyle, how many days, in addition to the 25 that you're requesting, would you be operating the track for personal use? Because that was one of the questions came up here, and I just wanted to try to narrow it down on how many days you were gonna operate.
It varies. Typically it works out Tuesday or Wednesday evening from 5 until dusk possibly for a couple hours, and used to be Sunday afternoons more. It's been less because we've been at more races. I don't have an exact number of days. I didn't really keep track of them, but I would say probably close to 2 times a week from May until October.
Okay,
Very, very seldom more than 2 times a week, and Sunday afternoons would usually go from 2 p.m. until 4 to 6.
okay,
And Tuesday or Wednesday evenings goes from start at between 5 or 6 and go until roughly 8-ish.
and then that would be in addition to the 25 days you're requesting, right? You still wanna operate that way?
There'd be less need for the Wednesday if we were able to. Jake, my son, will ride out there
Yeah,
probably daily, usually so. But outside of that, probably less days.
so when they do the training sessions, how many people you think would be there, just guessing on an average?
Need at least 8 to make it affordable for him to come.
Okay.
Because we do not make any money off of it. It costs us money to have him come.
Okay,
And at least 8 riders, up to 12, 14. And then if parents stick around to help, or brothers or sisters, so maybe a total of 20 to 25 total, including our family.
I'm kinda getting at the, like how many bikes will be.
Oh, 8 to 12, or 8 to 15. 8 to 15 bikes.
Okay. I guess that's the only question I have.
Very well, Mr. Bravender. Can the
Can I
chair,
just add a comment in here?
and who's speaking?
This is Jane O'Shea.
Well, let's make it quick, Jane, and please don't repeat anything that's
Okay.
already been said.
Just so that you know, from my understanding, the private use of the track does not have anything to do with this public use of the track. And so another huge concern we have as neighbors is that he'll be having clinics, and then basically, I mean, even though we have a verbal agreement, Kyle can really use the track outside of those clinics as often as he wants. And that's a huge concern to neighbors. If he's running these clinics and then they decide to use the track outside of those clinics, and that's why I did the math, and it's unacceptable. I just wanted to interject that so that, because I do believe that the council does not regulate the private use of the track, and sometimes there's a lot of kids and a lot of noise over there.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. O'Shea. This is Ken, the chair. I have a question to Mr. Ashwell. Now, you said there might be 20 to 25 kids at any one time during this clinic?
No, people.
People.
That includes adults helping.
All right, and then the answer you gave of 8 to 15, what was that?
That was riders
Number of
on bikes.
Okay, then my follow-up question to that then, is that those riders on bikes, could it be as many as 15 bikes simultaneously, running, jumping over this track and such?
A possibility, yes, but unlikely. They break them into groups when there's more riders and do sections.
Okay. How many bikes in your estimation would be running at the same time over this motocross?
6, groups of 6.
Groups
Roughly,
of 6,
yeah.
okay. 6 bikes.
Roughly, yes.
Okay, very well. All right, we'll proceed down the line here now. Mr. Burrell, do you have any questions of the applicant?
No, I didn't, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. How about you, Ms. Thompson?
So I have a question. Sometimes don't ride a dirt bike. My son is past that age of dirt bike. He did have a dirt bike once, and I know that they're really noisy. When we come out, if we decide to come out for a site inspection, is there any way that you could give us a demonstration to help us understand what the noise volume of 25 people riding dirt bikes would sound like? I have a hard time getting my head around that.
Well, 20,
Mr. Ashwood?
I'm a reader. I just don't understand what you have on the.
Go ahead and answer that, Mr. Ashwell.
well, there won't be 25 bikes on the track at any one time ever. So I wouldn't be able to organize that, and even to organize 10 at the same time could be done, but it takes some planning to get that
Well, how
many.
many people at a time would be riding on the track?
Between 8 and 15, typically groups of 6, yes.
I don't know how many you have in your family, kids or whatever.
I only
Maybe
have,
you just have them all.
I only have one,
There's kind of a-
I only have one boy that rides and then myself.
It's hard to know.
Well,
Just a question.
if there does come to a site visit and that's something you want, we can somehow round up 6 bikes.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, well, I
I
can't
don't
see her.
ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an
I
old.
have one last comment.
Miss Shea, Miss O'Shea?
Public comments still open?
Miss O'Shea, the public comment time was about due, and is it
One
important?
last comment, Janet Betsy.
I'm sorry?
I have one last comment.
Could it be quick, please?
Yes, it would. When we're considering this, I'd like you to personally think about you inviting Kyle Ashwell Commercial Track to be sitting right next to you every day for these amount of days all summer long.
Right.
And say, hey, would I like to invite this man to do this to me at my home
Okay, we get all that, Mrs. O'Shea. I'll have to move on here.
Mrs. Keski,
I'm sorry, Mr.
Mrs. Keski.
or Mrs. Keski, I'm sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
finished.
okay, very well. I'm sorry to Mrs. O'Shea for that last error on my part. Okay, Charlie, you don't have any comments. Jan, you were finishing up your comments, is that correct?
Yes, that was what I'd like you to think about it personally. You invite him over to the next door too.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. I was talking to our board member, Miss Thompson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'll push mute.
Very well, thank you. That would be appreciated.
Okay, well, I just want to be able to figure out how we can go about recreating the kind of noise that will, because lakes make a big difference. We live out on the river, and you know, noise just travels across the water so fast. And so I'm just trying to be able to get a true picture of what it would sound like out there. But we'll have to figure out how to do that. Thank you. No more questions.
All right, Jan, how about Mr. Malberg? Do you have any comment?
No, I don't. I'm gonna want a site visit.
Okay. Is that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I guess I will make one comment though, with the discussion that went on, I'll just follow up with, I'm surrounded down here in Woodland Township by 3 large dairy farms that really, really smell bad, and I'll trade anybody up there in French Lake for the dairy farms and bring the dirt bike tracks down right next to my place.
Mr. Malberg, were you going to make a motion?
I don't think I'm gonna make a motion on what Charlie's not where he's at, but for the site visit, I would.
Had a motion for a site visit?
Is that a motion for a site visit, Mr. Malberg?
Mr. Chair, this is Jan Thompson, board member Jan Thompson.
Yes.
I would like to have Mr. Malberg make the motion again. I couldn't hear what he said. So if you would mind, Pat, would you please repeat your motion?
Very well. Mr. Malberg?
I'll make a motion to make a motion to conduct a site visit.
I'll second that.
And would that be then to continue the proceedings until the next meeting, Mr. Malberg?
Yeah, it needs to be, I'd like to be part of the same motion.
Okay, very well. And that's
October
okay with the second?
October 15th?
Did you second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right, just to be clear, there's a motion on the floor for a site visit and to continue the proceedings until
October 15th.
October 15th. And then we have a second, Mr. Bravender, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Now, yes, I have a question. I couldn't hear, was there a date stated in the motion for the site inspection?
No.
Decide that after.
No, we usually do that at the end of the meeting, Jan.
Yes, okay, fine, because that's what I would like to discuss after we finish.
Very well.
I have no more questions.
We will determine that at the end of the session here today. And of those of you who want to know when that is, either hang in there and listen or call the planning and zoning office tomorrow. All right. Any further discussion?
One question.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify that for people that are on the meeting?
Surely.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I clarify
Yes.
that for the people on the meeting, the
Yes.
site inspection?
Yes.
The planning commission continued this item to the October 15th meeting. After this meeting, they will be scheduling a time and date to go site inspect this property. It's simply to go out and view the property in the neighborhood, and they will reconvene for the meeting on October 15th. The public comment has not been closed, so if anybody submits any more comments, that will be made part of the record. And if you want a WebEx invite, you can get another WebEx invite for that meeting. I would suggest instead of hanging in for another maybe 30, 40 minutes of meeting, you call the office tomorrow if you want to know when the site inspection was scheduled.
Is that it, Sean?
That's it, thank you.
Okay, very well. I'm going to allow the applicant to make a comment.
We'll be gone on the 15th. Am I able to do I have to be present at the meeting or can I be on the WebEx?
October 15th, it's up to you.
Well, yeah, we will be gone, so I won't be able to personally attend a meeting here.
Okay, does that put a hardship on you, so to speak, or?
Yeah,
Be here.
yeah, it's been planned. I won't be in town. We'll be
Right.
out of town.
Well, Sean, would you mind if we then maybe extended it out further?
Could we do,
Can he do WebEx with us?
Well, yeah, but if he wants to be here,
oh, I'm not necessarily, it doesn't matter to me, long as the effects are the same, whether I do WebEx or in person.
well, if you feel comfortable doing it by WebEx on the 15th, that's fine, at the same time, same station, 1 o'clock.
Or is the next one December 15th?
No, it'd be probably in,
November.
when's the next
Oh,
meeting
November.
after the 15th, Terry?
Check for you.
He'll check on that for you.
November, it would be the 12th.
Could it get pushed to that?
November 12th, yeah, that's not,
It may be that you may have to sign a waiver in terms of
My time.
us getting back to you within 60 days. So if you don't mind signing a waiver,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, we should be good on that because this was the first time it was heard and it's being continued. So we have a further allowance. If not, we'll follow up, but I think we should be good.
okay, very well. In any event, if it comes to signing a waiver of some measure, just because it's pushed out, you would not have a problem with that?
I wouldn't
Mr.
have a
Asher?
problem with that.
Okay, very well. Well then, if you'd feel more comfortable November 12th, we can certainly do that, if it's okay with the maker and seconder of the motion. No, that was for a site visit. Well, actually, it was.
Continuation.
Part-
oh, it's for continuing it to the
Right.
next meeting.
Okay, so who made the motion?
It was Pat, wasn't it?
Was it Pat? Mr. Mulberg? We are proposing pushing this out to the planning commission meeting held on November 12th. Okay with you?
That's fine.
And
That's fine with me.
and it's fine with the seconder, Mr. Bravender. Okay, any further discussion on this?
One more item, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, I think it's highly advisable the applicant is present for the site inspection. So I'd like to do our best
Okay,
to
surely.
make sure we don't avoid any
Right.
conflicts with the owner not being able to be around for a site inspection.
I guess that would have been assumed, but forgive me for not mentioning that. Are there any upcoming days within now and next few weeks that you're not available, Mr. Ashwell?
We're gonna, I'll personally be gone for work until the 26th. So after the week of the 28th, could something be scheduled then?
Of September?
Yeah.
Okay, well, September 28th, and what else is open? From there on until?
From there until we leave for October 15th. From the 28th to the 8th.
Okay, so we should do our consideration somewhere between the 28th of September and October 8th, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very well. All right, so let's vote on the motion unless there's any further discussion. Let's start with Mr. Malberg's end of the table.
Mulberg, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Felger, aye.
Bravender, aye.
Okay, very well. The motion, it is moved to move the hearing date for until November 12th, and in the meantime here, we will be setting a site inspection date between September 28th and October 8th. Okay, very well.
If, can I make one more comment?
Surely.
If you're requesting bikes out there, or Mrs. Thompson's requesting bikes out there, that's gonna take some planning.
Well, we're gonna be determining today
Oh, okay.
when we're gonna make that site inspection and
Okay.
what time. So
Okay.
you can either hang in here today until we're done with the
Okay.
rest of our business, or again, call tomorrow.
Okay.
To the zoning office.
Perfect.
All right?
Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir, for so much of your time. Appreciate it. All right, we'll take a pause here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, there you are. Okay, thank you for jumping in.
And I sent an invite to the owner too. I'm not sure if he is on board here, Paul, do you know?
He is on board.
Okay.
Okay, very well.
We have the applicant and his representative attending via WebEx, and again, we have a handful of people that have got the invite and joined on the WebEx, so we'll have to work through that too at public comment.
Okay, very well. All right, Sean, we have Mr. Otto representing Buffalo Lake LLC and Mr. Michael Erpelding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very well. Sean, bring us up to date on this applicant's petition.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, I'll go through the basics real quick here. The property is located on the south side of Buffalo Lake, east of Deer Lake. The property is zoned agriculture. It's in the land use plan as ag residential. The request is to rezone the property to ARPUD and a 12-lot residential subdivision. Since it's a PUD, site plan narrative and more detailed information is needed than just a traditional AR. And if the rezoning is approved, the 12-lot is a CUP also for the subdivision. This is the preliminary concept plan showing the new township road that would be dedicated to the township going onto the county road, and outlots surrounding the development. An exhibit showing floodplain. I will let Paul describe the layout and the nature of the development.
Sure thing. May I go ahead, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Otto, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Certainly. Paul Otto, Otto Associates, 9 West Division Street in Buffalo.
Very well. Thank you. Please proceed.
Do you want my client's name and address as well now?
Well, I may as well take that now.
Okay, Michael Erpelding, 3574 Woodland Court, Eagan, Minnesota, 55123.
Thank you. All right, Paul.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the property hasn't been fully surveyed, but what we calculate the area to be is 82.4 acres. So that would allow us through the standard PUD process of 6 lots per 40 acres would come out to 12.4 acres, or rounding to 12 lots. This property proposes 50 acres of open space out of the 82 acres. What we tried to do in our design, well, so first off, I should start with the connection to the county road. We have gotten at least a preliminary approval from the highway department that that access point would be acceptable. And so we would be coming in there. There is a feedlot to the east of us. So if you kind of look at our layout, there is what I would say there's a lot missing in there, and the reason being is because the feedlot setback kind of takes one of those first lots, and there's not enough room to build outside the feedlot setback. So we have taken that into account with our layout. The other thing that we tried to do is try to keep these lots out of the floodplain. So you'll notice it has kind of a real odd configuration. What we're trying to do is we're trying to follow the floodplain so that basically the floodplain that is on the property would be contained in the open space, the common open space, rather than in the lots. Just figuring that's a little bit easier for everybody to understand that they don't own the floodplain, and probably easier for the county to have to deal with in the future of trying to decide if people are filling in the floodplain or not. All of the lots will access the new road with the exception of one lot, which is on the west side. That will access existing Armitage Avenue. There's one lot over there. And then kind of would like to know the open space. The way that I designed it is that the open space has essentially, you can circle all of the lots on this and be connected to open space. So you can pretty much every lot has access to the open space, and there theoretically could be a nice kind of walking trail around essentially all the homes on the inside and down to the lake. So we try to keep everything with a perimeter buffer, if you will, from all the other lots of at least 50 feet. So, and then the last thing I'll give, and I'll let you move on, is the driveway on the entrance part. You'll see that looks a little bit odd. It's not just 66 feet. We tried to extend it up so that if the neighboring property owner, they have a driveway adjacent to the property line, if they wanted to connect, they would be able to connect to our main road. I'll take any questions, otherwise I'll listen in and comment as appropriate.
Well, Mr. Otto, this is Ken Felger, the Vice Chair. Now, I see on your proposed layout here that in addition to that trail you've got going around the lots in the form of a common open space, does that open space then directly shoot off to the east to meet up with Highway 12, or what is that little strip of land?
Yeah, this property has a little remnant piece that goes to the east. It's crossing a wetland, so it's probably not accessible in the summertime. But we didn't know what to do with it, so we just included it in the outlot.
I see. Very well. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions from the board members? Mr. Bravender?
Not at this time.
No questions? How about Charlie? You have any questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Jan?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. Malberg?
Not at this time, thank you.
Very well. All right. Now, Sean, can you help us out here? And I'll have you kind of manage the calls from the calling in remotely if you can. Are there anyone out there in the public realm that would care to speak on this subject?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did send some invites, so I'd like to remind people you need to unmute yourself if you'd like to comment on this request. Bring attention to yourself, Mr. Chair, and then please say your name and address. I hear somebody talking. I see Julie Pearsall.
I'm Mr. Pearsall.
Yep, we hear you, Mr. Chair. They are requesting to comment.
Okay, very well. Please clearly state your name and address, please, and go forward with your comments.
Christopher and Julie Pearsall, address is 484 Armitage Avenue Southwest in Buffalo 55313.
Very well.
We
Thank you.
live on the left side of the easement that you see on the north side of it. And one question we had was if there's any plans. I know in the past there was some concern about using that as an access back to those housing. And we had three boys that it's a very quiet dead-end road, and that would be used as an access point, as a driveway to get back to those houses.
Mr. Otto?
Plan is for that.
Mr. Otto, on your plan, could he be referring to that little strip just to the northwest of Lot 1, Block 3?
Yes, correct. I believe Sean has his cursor on it. That is part of the proposed common open space. So it wouldn't be an access to any of the homes. It would be access to the open space too. So theoretically, the homeowners that would be using the open space would be able to access Armitage. If I may, typically the common open space, just for people who don't really know, is that it's owned in common by all of the property owners, so they have an equal interest in it. It can't be built on for a home, they can use it. I live in a PUD, we have 13 owners that own it in common, and there's about 5 or 6 of us that maintain some trails around it. They're just grass mowed trails. That's what we do with ours. But, so how they would use it, I guess I don't know. It would depend on the character of the people that would move in.
Currently, you take care of that, no one else does. We just want to make sure that they're going to be.
Excuse me, excuse me, this is the this is the vice chair speaking here. Whomever you are, could you please identify yourself and also speak louder, please? Could you speak louder, please?
Julie Pearson.
Mr. Chair, it's the same resident.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, I understand that. Could she also please speak closer to the telephone or whatever device she's using, please?
So it was just wondering, it's currently it's not used for anything, it's grass. Wondering that was just the concern, is that if it was become a driveway or what? Okay, so it's just part of the common area that could be used for an undetermined.
Mr. Chair, Paul Otto again.
Yes.
We don't have any intent to improve that over what it is. If it's a grass mow, if you guys have a grass and mowed, the only thing I would say is that, these people could access in and out of there, but we don't have any plans to build any road or do anything else with it. We would just leave it as it is, and just knowing that, if people wanted to walk out there and get to Armitage, they could.
Okay, now Sean, is there anyone else out there? Anyone else?
Chair, I do see at least one other individual.
Very well.
Yes, I have a question.
What's your name, please?
My name is Janet Adrian Heath. My address is 452nd Street Southwest, and I live next to the property. I'm the last homeowner on the lake before this property starts. And I have a question in regards to lake access.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, so is there going to be all docks alongside of this land? Is there going to be private boat access? Is there any plans for that with this development?
Mr. Chair, Paul Otto, I can comment on that. I guess what I would say is that the property does have lake access, so they will have rights to the lake. We have no intention of proposing a large boat dock or anything else, but somebody could put a dock in a boat or multiple. It would be regulated by the DNR regulations. We aren't looking to go to them to get a marina permit or anything else, so it would be the same as any other property along the lake.
Okay. So there will be no development along the lake. You're going to keep that natural?
That's correct.
Okay.
If you're looking at the map that Sean has up here now, we're probably about 400 feet from the lake. That first part is lower, it's floodplain, and we are not proposing to raise it or change anything with it. So other than, probably some of these owners I would presume would access the lake, there isn't going to be really a lot of impact, and there's still be a big buffer to the lake from the homes and lawns.
Okay. And if we want a copy of this layout, are you going to mail these out, or could I just come down to planning and zoning, get a copy of this?
We can email that to you. If I forget, remind me with a follow-up email.
Okay, thanks.
Is that it, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay, very well. Sean, anyone else out in the public?
This is Chris again. A question on, I know it was brought to Marysville Township last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was, and I didn't get on that call. I don't know. I think some of the concerns were the road placement and things like that. Wondering if this proposal, what the changes were, or if there is any, or if it's,
Well, to be clear,
Buffalo, I don't know how it works. If this is the Buffalo and Marysville Township approval, or if it's just Buffalo that approves it.
Sean, to be clear, this is Ken speaking. Just to be clear, what's before us is simply change in zoning, proposed change in zoning. Is that correct?
I'm hearing some paper shuffle, so I didn't pick that all up, but I'll try to summarize. The property is in Marysville Township. They have authority over the proposed dedicated public road right-of-way. They were met with a number of times on the configuration and the requirements of the road. At this time, conceptually, they've agreed to the road. This part of the request is rezoning to ARPUD. So although we're seeing the details of a preliminary layout, the decision on rezoning has to be made before all the discussion about the details. And that's why we're recommending a site inspection, because there's probably going to be a number of questions about floodplain and size of lots and sewer sites and the feedlot and per se. So that's where it stands now.
But to break it down, Sean, all we're looking at is, this board right at this point in time is rezoning request. Is that correct?
Correct, to an ARPUD with this preliminary concept plan in front of you.
Okay, very well. Thank you. All right, anyone else in the public? Were you finished, ma'am, speaking?
Mr. Chair, this is Jan.
Jan?
Could I just for clarification, suggest that John gives the people that are ready to the displays that you're showing in-house, that the exact location of the nearest town to Buffalo Lake. We're not talking about Buffalo, Minnesota now, we're talking about Buffalo Lake, right? Nearest town to that would be.
So correct, so this is Buffalo Lake, it's on the south side, so we're in close proximity to the city.
And what city is that?
City of Buffalo. So it's just south of town. So as you can see in this area, that's city development. On the west side, the northwest side is still township, Chatham Township. And then the entire southern portion here is still in the township also. Right in here, this is, it is kind of at the intersection of the townships, but this property is in Marysville Township.
All right, are there any other questions, or excuse me, let me back up. Sean, anyone else from the public that would like to comment?
I'm not sure, I'm trying to scroll through here and, just a second.
I'll report back when you're ready.
Because there's a number of other people that did have requested invites, but I'm not necessarily seeing them at this time.
John, I don't know if you can hear me, this is Brett Oden, I did have some comments.
Okay. Yep, well, I do have Brett here. So Mr. Chair, I'm assuming he can weigh in.
Yes, sir. Please state your name and address, please.
Mr. Chair, this is Brett Oden. My address is 408 2nd Street Southwest. I'm calling sort of on behalf of many of my neighbors on 2nd Street Southwest that join the property and share lakefront with this property. My question is for both Paul and the owner in terms of sort of how these home sites are going to be marketed. As Paul, as you adeptly pointed out, the common space, a lot of what happens to the common space will be dictated by the homeowners themselves, and a lot of that activity is going to be partially dictated in terms of how the property is marketed. The reason I bring this up is the importance of the wetland here to Buffalo Lake. I own 3 parcels adjacent to it on the lake, including 5 acres of wetland. And I want to point out, without going into a lot of details, that there's a lot of different types of wetlands. If you go on to the DNR's wetland map, you will see that about 90% of the lake shore of this proposed property is wetlands, and there's only a very narrow strip on the very east side of it that is not designated wetland. So in terms of lake access, the only lake access is a very small strip adjacent to the 2nd Street Southwest property. And a lot of homeowners buying into this type of development may not realize that. Okay, it is a particular type of wetland called seasonally flooded basin, and that is a very different type of wetland than marsh or some of the other wetlands in the area. It's 10 acres, 9.76 in total, and it's very important for the health of Buffalo Lake. I've been here 31 years. I'm very familiar with the flora and fauna in that area, and even doing something as simple as trying to improve view to the lake from the common area or from some of the home sites, destroying that emergent vegetation, that perennial emergent vegetation there is going to cause problems with erosion, and then is going to cause problems with the wildlife in the lake shore there. So I want to make sure that the DNR is totally on board. I understand that this is planning and zoning and that all DNR rules would still need to be followed. But from the very get-go, I think it's important that the public and the neighbors understand that is this going to be marketed as homes that are behind a floodplain, or is it going to be marketed lake access recreational? Okay, and you'll find this out on the site visit that end of the lake is not the prettiest part of the lake, right? It's very shallow. It's not amenable to motorboating. It is essentially, excuse the expression, sort of the business end of the lake. Okay, but that's very important for the health of the lake. When people downtown see the pelicans and say, "Oh, isn't it wonderful? We see these balding pelicans." Well, they're roosting in that area, right along that shoreline. And if we have a lot of people accessing through the wetlands here where they're not supposed to be, that's going to be an issue. And that's not necessarily a DNR permitting thing. It's the behavior of the residents that live there. My question again, going back, is how is this being marketed? Is this being marketed as lakeshore access property for recreational boating? Because that is totally not going to fit well with the environment.
Thank you, Mr. Oden. Who would like to answer that? Yeah, Paul. Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you, Brett. Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the lake, so I know the lake as well. As far as what's going to happen when we get to there, we haven't done a wetland delineation. The maps that you look at are very general and actually very broad in saying that things are a wetland when maybe they aren't. That will get proved out. We're here for rezoning at this point, so we don't really know what we have for access to the lake until we do that delineation. You know as well as I do that, I mean, the U of M ski team used to come out here for about 5 summers and went skiing out of there, so it might be the business end, but it was good enough for them to come out and use it. It might have been price or whatever, but, so there is some use to the property. I don't think it's fair to say that people coming in here can't use it. They can use it. They can't disrupt wetlands. And so that will probably be worked out through the PUD process with the county, to figure out, what is that access, and maybe we need to define it as we move forward, and we can certainly do that. We're not here to ruin things, we want to follow the rules, and I don't think we're here to market it as, like I said, there isn't fines to say, it's a bouldering or whatever else. That isn't going to be off the table, no different than, there's some value in that, no different than the property that you bought on the lake. I mean, you realize the value, and we would hope that people coming into here would realize the value of these. My experience is the people that are buying into the PUDs are typically, what they like is they like having more space. They might not want to maintain 10 acres, but they sure like seeing the lake, they like seeing the eagles, they like having the space they can go and wander around on their own, and know that they're not trespassing. So my experience in the PUDs is that most of the people, all outdoors nature people that are going to be good stewards of the land. Now there's always exceptions, but that's what I see, at least in my development.
Thank you, Mr. Otto. Is there anyone else in the public who would care to comment? All right, seeing none, we'll kind of pause on the public comment for now. We are not closing it, but we're not seeing any others right at the moment. Are there any questions now from the board of Mr. Otto and the applicant? I won't do a roll call, just jump right in.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to put this off until October 15th meeting and do a site inspection.
Okay, very well. Then we have a motion on the table.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very well. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, we'll start with Mr. Mulberg's end of the table.
Mulberg is aye.
Thompson says aye.
Belger, aye.
Ravender, aye.
Okay, motion passes to continue this until October 15th. A site inspection date and time will be set at the end of this meeting. Those of you in the public who wish to inquire as to when that site inspection may occur, we won't be taking any testimony at that site inspection. However, you're certainly welcome to show up in any event. So anyway, where are we going here? Let's see. Okay. Motion passes. We're done with that item for now. Thank you, Mr. Otto and Mr. Erpelding. If you wish to hang in there and find out when the site inspection is, please do. Otherwise, give Sean a call. I think, Mr. Otto, you know the process. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 7, we're taking up, number 8, Sonia M. Dahlberg. This is relative to review of existing conditional use permit for a personal dog kennel. In any event, Sean, could you bring the board up to speed on this, please?
Yes, just a second. Mr. Chair, this property has a conditional use permit for the dog kennel. It's in Clearwater Township, zoned to agriculture. Last year we did a similar hearing with a continuation to reconvene and have a site inspection before that. Before this date, the site inspection was done. Greg might eventually weigh in here, but this is not technically been notified or treated as a revocation hearing of a CUP, but a planning commission review of the conditional use permit, the terms, and if they are being adhered to. With that, I will turn it over to the planning commission, and all people are in attendance in a virtual setting.
Thank you, Sean. Well, as Mr. O'Reilly mentioned, that this is not a revocation hearing per se. Just to, I guess, garner more comments from neighbors, discussion amongst the board members. And where we ultimately go from this point in time, I'm not certain, but whoever's speaking right now, the chair is speaking.
You open the initial comments.
I'm sorry? Was that you, Sean, speaking?
Yes.
What? I was speaking and you were speaking. What were you saying?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead with your statement, Sean.
I was just recommending the two property owners have joined us via WebEx. I unmuted their microphones in case they didn't know they were muted. And I would recommend taking their comments to begin.
Okay, very well. Now, I believe this was at a site visit, what, about a month or two ago, possibly, Sean? Is that correct? We
Correct, you were out
revisited
there approximately
6 weeks
month and a
ago?
half ago.
Yeah, okay, very well. Well, let's, I'll let you manage it, Sean. Let's hear from the adjacent property owners.
So Daryl and Sonia, I see you're online. Do you hear us?
This is Sonia Beavers. I do hear you.
Sonia, feel free to make your initial input.
We're trying to be real transparent with our neighbors and giving them our information so that they can contact us. So we have had some contact from a couple neighbors when they heard dogs barking, and we've taken care of for that. We did have a site visit by the board, I believe it was last month, and at that time, the board did discuss that there wasn't a lot of barking. Actually, there wasn't any barking at that time. We've also had the police out here a couple times, and they have stated there isn't any barking, and we have able police officers. Other than that, we just want to be good stewards of our property here and good neighbors to the people that surround us, and I think we've been doing a really good job with that.
Anything further to add, ma'am?
Yeah, unless anybody has any other questions for us.
Well, I'll tell you what. Heard a motorcycle. Sean, is there anyone else from the public domain that would wish to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there's at least one other person signed in wanting to address this item. I believe he's unmuted his mic and would like to address the chair.
Very well.
Yes, hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Bill Langenbacher. I am the chairman for the Clearwater Township Supervisor Board. I sent Sean an email earlier today, and I would just like to read that to the board. I'm not sure you have copies of it or not. To begin with, I have over the time since the last hearing on 12/12/2019, again received comments of dog barking disturbances from close proximity neighbors. In addition, I've personally heard excessive barking on numerous occasions. I submit that this constitutes violation of condition number 8 of the CUP. Per request of the County Planning Commission, I have contacted by email the permit holder on numerous occasions and inquired if measures could be taken to better control barking. I have copied Mr. Riley and Stacy Marquardt on these emails. While it is not the job of the township to recommend action, the county asked the township to monitor the situation and report back. Now, I request the Clearwater Township is asking the County Planning Commission to administer the CUP in accordance with the conditions set forth in said CUP. That is to address specifically item number 8 in their CUP. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else out there, Sean, and joining us remotely?
I am looking here. I do not see the remote people, just the submitted comments. from the residents we put in your packet.
Okay, very well. Well, bring it back up to the board here. Where do we go, folks? What do we consider?
Perhaps, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jan?
perhaps for the record, you could, ask Sean to read item 8. Did you hear me?
No, I can hear you slightly better now.
Okay, yeah, I would like to have Sean read number 8 of the CUP.
All right. John?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm fishing for the document.
Very well.
Eight requires a significant effort is made to control the parking.
This is Bill Langenbacher speaking again, the township supervisor. The sentence does not end there. It says, control the parking so as not to disturb the neighbors.
Thank you.
Any further comment? Any more comment, insight from the board members?
Yeah, I would like to expand upon that. Chair.
I'm sorry, repeat that, Jan, would you?
Okay, I would like to have another question addressed to the supervisor in charge of the board.
Certainly.
Obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously you feel that there is a violation of number 8, correct?
That is correct, based on receiving comments from 4 different surrounding neighbors. And this has been ongoing for well over a year.
And you have talked to the people that the owners of the property that care for the dogs, etc.?
I have sent them several emails, and I've copied Mr. Riley on that, and also Stacy Marford on those.
Thank you. I'm going to pass for a second. I just want to look up something here. Thank you.
So, Chairperson, this is Sonia Beaver. Could we just comment on that last statement by Bill?
I would certainly think that would be appropriate.
We do appreciate the emails that Bill has sent us, and we have emailed Bill back on occasion. When we received those emails, one of the ones that he said our dogs had been barking all day, which we found to be interesting because that day we were pressure washing all of our kennels, and the dogs had never even been let out that day other than a quick bathroom visit because they have to be let out while we're pressure washing the building and all of the cement slabs. So there are a lot of dogs. In fact, every property owner around us has one or more dogs. In fact, across the river, there's also a small in a different township in Stewart County. They have a dog kennel also, and they have a CUP for that. So I don't know that necessarily all the dogs that are barking that Bill is hearing are necessarily our dogs, because in this case, they weren't our dogs. And that was, an email that he had sent us. Also, we've had our dogs, the same number of dogs for over 10 years now, about 13 years. We really didn't have these complaints until Bill moved in. So we really just got one neighbor who does the majority of the complaining. And as I said earlier, we are trying to be good stewards of our property and good neighbors. You know, the dogs are not out. They used to be out a lot more. Now we keep them crated in crates that are allowed by the Board of Animal Health, and we let them out for potty breaks. So they're not just out on those inside-outside runs much anymore.
Thank you, Sonia. Well, board members, I don't know where we're going with this thing. Give me some direction. Sean, Greg, board members?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think the discussion about the barking has been the end game. It's been what's happening or not happening because of efforts in controlling or supervising the dogs. I don't live out there, so I get the emails that say this is happening, and then a response back, it's not us, or the dogs are in the kennels. Number 4, it says the dogs are supervised and leashed or fenced while outside. And then we had a long discussion at the last meeting that essentially meant when nobody's at home, the dogs aren't supposed to be outside by themselves, not supervised. So if somebody's not home and they are outside, I don't know how you know if they're barking or not. If they are inside, I don't know if you could hear the barking in the neighborhood. But I think this is more about supervision and dogs being inside or outside or supervised or not than barking, because obviously at some point some dogs are going to bark, and then people should tell them to stop. So I don't know how we figure out or evaluate if dogs are being supervised properly.
So where do we go?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Charlie.
So this is Sonia Beaver. Can I comment on that last question?
Ma'am, I recognize Mr. Burrell before you, please. You'll be next. Charlie?
Thank you, Deputy. The only thing, I guess what I want to know, just because this is a township supervisor that's doing the complaining, we don't treat him any different and he has no more weight than any other citizen. And I'm telling the time that we have been out there, the dogs have not been allowed. Now, whatever, Sean, if you're getting an email, has Terry or somebody gone out and inspected it? Because when the police have been out, when the sheriff's office has been out, they have not heard the dogs barking loudly. So I just question how serious this really is. And Mr. Lundenbacher has to realize he lives in the country, and the country there's noises and there's smells, and if you want peace and quiet, go back a day. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, Sonia, you had to make a comment as well?
Oh, sorry.
Sonia?
So I was just commenting, for supervision, I work as, I'm a pediatric nurse, so I work nights, and I'm home all day. We used to have a lot of dogs out during the day while I'm sleeping, because I sleep with the window open, even in the winter. And so now we're not even doing that. So, there's somebody home all day long, and then we've got kids who are over the age of 18 who get home from work at 5 o'clock, and they're here until I get home from work. So, unless we're at church on Sunday mornings is about the only time that the dogs are not supervised, whether they're in the building or out in their dog run. There's always somebody here.
Thank you. Any other comment?
This is Bill Langenbacher, the township supervisor again. May I comment?
Yes, you may.
In regards to Mr. Burrell's statement, I am not the only complainant, although I have heard the dogs barking myself. I am reporting, though, that I have had comments from 4 other neighbors about the dog barking. It is not just me, myself. And I take affront to the insinuation that it is just myself. I am only reporting what I hear from my constituents as as a supervisor of the township.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
and anybody else that has a complaint should bring it forward.
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Yes, so just to speak to the process, we send out the township a review of these type of conditional use permits. And we received a form from the town board, requesting a review of the permit, and that barking was the main problem, and it was signed by the entire town board. So it is what it is. We can only go off of what we received. We received formal input from the township saying as such. I do have a few other responses from neighbors bringing up the barking, and that's in your staff report. We don't give any more weight if it was Bill or a different neighbor. And I can't speak to a neighbor making comment as a township supervisor that talk to other neighbors. I guess it is what it is. You go on a person's testimony and evaluate it based on what you've seen.
All right, very well. So where are we going with this thing?
Chair,
Yes, Jan?
I have a question for Sonia. You said that the only time that the dogs might be outside alone is weekends. Did I hear that correct? That would, otherwise there are people around all the time. Is there any way that you could just share with us if it would be possible for you to, anytime that you or your children leave the property, that the dogs just be put inside? That seems to me would satisfy everybody at this point.
So this is Sonia Beavers, and yes, we are completely on board with that, and that is what we've been trying to do. Sunday morning is about the only time that the dogs, or there's nobody on our property. And so on Sundays, we just let dogs out to go to the bathroom before we go to church, and then when we come home, if we need to exercise dogs, that's when we put them out. So, yep, we are completely on the same page as you are. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Well, I'm comfortable with that response. And as long as there's somebody making sure that when nobody's on property, that the dogs are inside, I'm just okay with what's happening here.
Sean, this is,
Commissioner Feldner,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say I agree with Jan.
Right. Now, I was going to ask, yeah, good point, Charlie. I was going to ask Sean if that was part of the original CUP, was when nobody was there, the dogs were inside. Does that kind of follow along with what Jan just said?
Mr. Chair, that's at the last meeting how we discussed and interpreted being supervised if the dogs are outside, and if they're not being supervised, then they're indoors. And I think Commission Member Alberg got a comment he was trying to speak.
Oh, okay, very well. Patrick?
Thanks, you were asking where we go with this one. Understanding both that there are complaints that are being received by some of the neighbors, and also that basically the body of evidence that we have is when we went out there that afternoon for our site visit, and I was the first to arrive. Like most farm sites or rural sites, there's dogs there, and they did bark. When you pull up, no different than when a delivery man came. But then they did quiet down. And they are deep bark, and going off that one first-hand impression,
I can't find that there's been a violation of CUP, and that's to say to, Mr. Lenbacher that you're not hearing it. Just that on the record that I have before me on this, I don't think that there's any violation that I could find. I'd encourage the owner to keep trying to make those efforts. Because if not, if the record is further developed, then my decision might be different. But I think we've got a bit of a dearth of evidence at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulberg. All right, any other board members have comments, or where do you want to go? Where do you want to go with this? Get it resolved.
What are our choices right now, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair, and Greg might want to weigh in, but to me it seems like you either find evidence to initiate a revocation process, you find evidence that does not need that process and that existing CUP must be adhered to, and notifying the township or their review as part of the process, or you modify the existing CUP in some manner.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I would just note that you can't modify the CUP unless you find a violation of it. So without that finding, it's really up to the board what you want to do. We brought this matter up basically to figure out, we got a complaint, tried to have the board decide what it wanted to do. Basically kind of like what we call a civil proceeding in order to show cause. So Sonia's had her opportunity to speak, as well as give a plan. So I think it's up to the board, point in time to decide do you want to go forward with revocation, you can continue for further review, or just dismiss the complaint at this matter for not having enough evidence to go forward.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we dismiss the proceedings with inadequate evidence to move forward.
Thank you, Charlie. We have a motion to dismiss due to lack of evidence to proceed with a revocation hearing. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Very well, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor of, all those who wish to vote on this, we'll start with Mr. Bravender. State your name and vote.
Bravender votes aye.
Felger votes aye.
Earl votes aye.
Both sides.
Albert votes aye.
Very well. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for all your time.
Site inspection.
Sorry?
Next will be the site inspection.
Yes, hang in there, commissioners. We'll need to set our site inspection date and time. Keeping in mind, Mr. Ashwell of French Lake Township will be gone on the what did he say? 28th through the 15th, he would be available, is that what I? After the 28th, right. 28th through, anyway.
He's, from the
Mr. Chair,
Hang on a minute, Jan.
28th through the 8th, he was available for sure.
Okay. Mr. Ashwell, the motocross applicant, will be available the 28th of September through October 8th. Can we fit it in there? And Jan, you had a comment?
yes, I would like to make it as close to the beginning of October as possible.
Okay.
How about October 1st?
All right. Mr. Bravender is suggesting October 1st.
is Commissioner Malberg. I personally will always yield whatever works best for the rest of you. I'm going to be out of state on the 1st of October, and my schedule won't open up again until the 6th of October.
Okay. So you're not available the 6th. I don't know, 6th seems okay with me.
October 6th?
October 6th?
That's county
I
board.
would really like to be here for that. I was
Unless it's
planning
afternoon, huh?
on making a visit to our friends in Georgia for a celebration.
Tuesday's county board meeting.
When do you leave, Jan?
Well, I was planning to leave, by the 5th, but I'll postpone it a day to the 6th if we can all get together then.
The last week of September work for people?
Yeah.
It will not for me, but I can go visit the site, I guess, outside of that visit, Jan. I don't want you to hold up plans to go to Georgia just because I'm out of state myself.
You go to too many horse shows, Pat.
This is North Dakota, and there won't be any horses. There won't be any horses there.
Just pipeline.
Just gonna say, Sean, you should have made a meeting.
No, they'll be,
Okay, folks, let's get back on.
there will be lawyers, will not be hunting.
Okay, 29th of September? Tuesday? No, yes.
That would be in the afternoon then, right, Ken?
Yeah, now Charlie, what days do you have a board meeting? Every Tuesday?
Yeah, it's either board meeting or workshop, so.
I see.
Tuesday afternoon on September 29th, I'm still open.
Okay. What
That's good.
could you make it by the 1st, or excuse me, 1 o'clock? Charlie?
That works.
Okay. Why don't we say then, September 29th at 1 PM here, we'll caravan out there, wherever we're going.
There's two places,
We're going to Cokato and to
Buffalo Lake.
Buffalo Lake. So, let's meet here at 1 o'clock. Call Sean for what time at the site? Sites. Courthouse, 1 o'clock. Probably hit Buffalo Lake first and then out to Cokato.
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay, 1 o'clock here at the courthouse, we can caravan, 29th of September.
Got it.
And this chairman has to get rolling here, so. Gotta go. Well, anything else to come before the board, Sean?
I have nothing.
All right, anyone else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Very well, thank you. And no one will let me discuss it, so I guess we're adjourned.